Greetings and a warm welcome from me, astrologer Patrick Arundell. Today, in the latest of my deep dive videos, I'm going to explore the Aries, the passionate Aries full moon of the 29th of September at 9:57 a.m. in terms of Universal Central Time. Ordinarily, I like to share the exact timings and dates on key lunations of all the major cities of the world. But we moved a week ago. I haven't done a video for nearly 2 weeks, so this is going to be a little bit more to the point, but I'm still going to tell you about what a full moon is, what an Aries full moon represents, and what makes this one so unique. I'm also then going to go through each of the 12 signs from Aries through to Pisces to give you a flavour of what you can expect in terms of your sun or your ascendant from now through the first 2 weeks of October. If you are new to my channel, thank you so much for joining us. Your support means everything to me, and if you're a regular viewer, it's lovely to have your company once more. If you've yet to subscribe, I'd be honoured if you would now. Please tap or click the bell notification symbol. And also, you can order your personal year 2024 forecast now. Now, this is based on your unique birth data, so totally unique to you. But if you do, I will prepare the rest of this year for you for free. But also my special package of 30% off, you will get your character analysis, your life roadmap report, which will give you really incredible insights into the patterns that have played out in your life so far and a much more intimate understanding of how to work with them. Please see the link below for more. Now, one of the things that we need to think about in terms of a full moon is what is the symbolism. If we think with the sun, we're acting out our desire to be heard, to manifest our drives, and in the sign of Libra, which of course the sun is not at its best in, it's in its full, this is very much about relationships. It can be about listening, asking questions, someone mentioned recently, which I thought was an excellent suggestion about Libra and energy. It is a cardinal sign, so it's about leadership, taking the initiative, but also it's about finding that equilibrium. Now, there's a thing about that word. I don't know if it struck you before, but it's the word Libra, equilibrium. So Libra is at the heart of even the roots of our language. So the sign of balance, trying to get that midpoint between what we want from our relationships, but also what we're prepared to give to others. We don't want to lose our authority by being too much of a people pleaser, but at the same time, if we're too caught up in Aries energy, which is the self, we can at times forget the need to relate skillfully. So I think working on our listening skills is always important with an Aries full moon. But what makes this Aries full moon so incredibly important is that it's the first for 17 years where the North Node is in the sign of Aries. The North Node is an energy which is collectively influencing us all. Now, of course, your personal North Node in terms of your natal chart may not be in Aries, but the collective is very much about trying to reignite our passion for what makes us individual. I do feel that the social media connectivity that we've all bought into so powerfully over the last 15 years or so, in some ways can at times see us losing that individuality. So the moon in Aries can be very much about standing up for what we want. It can be a little bit thoughtless. It can say things without thinking through the consequences because it's a very urgent energy. It's a fire sign. It's ruled by Mars. It's more instinctive, whereas the sign of Libra likes to weigh things up. So it can challenge that Libran energy of being too much of a people pleaser and prompts us not to forget our individual identity in any kind of relationship. But what makes this particular full moon so powerful is that Mars, the ruler of Aries, is actually in the sign of Libra. And of course, it's not in its fall like the sun, it's actually straightforward in detriment. So that's interesting. But if we look at where the south node is in Libra, it's pretty close to Mars, and that axis is being T-squared by the potent energies of Pluto. So on the screen now, I'm showing the solar wheel, which sees Pluto in the 10th house. The 10th house is very much about authority. It can be about old money, old business, the big businesses, big government, and of course, we've seen big changes going on since Pluto moved into Capricorn. In 2008, we had 11 weeks of a taster period in the sign of Aquarius from the 23rd of March earlier this year through to the 11th of June. But now, back in Capricorn, it has since the 17th of July been in conflict with the axis between the north and the south node. And that's going to go on within 3 degrees, which I think is a very powerful orb through to the end of October. But Mars on that south node is really quite igniting and potentially defensive. So I feel in terms of our worldly interactions, Pluto, that a bit more militancy can come to the fore, particularly if we feel in the past we have gone out of our way in any relationship, whether it's with an employer, a friend, a family member, or a partner. If we've bent into their needs, I think Mars being on that south node, but clashing with Pluto, is a very explosive combination. Now, these two, of course, are the rulers of Scorpio. So it may be that something that's been pushed to one side can erupt into the open, particularly over a point of fairness. So that's one thing that I wanted to just point out, that Mars, the ruler of Aries, is in Libra, so it's essentially in the opposite sign. But also we've got Venus, the ruler of Libra, in a beautiful link with Mars. They haven't in this recent connection formed an exact sextile, but they have been very close. And this has been ongoing, and it's really been going on since the 12th of September. So it's given us an opportunity to work on the relationships that we do feel are dynamic and interactive and passionate, and that's really lovely. Also, Mercury is forging a super link to Uranus, so if we can be inventive around our practical resources, that's useful. It's just that Mercury, as you can see from the screen, is opposed by the dreamy influence of Neptune, so some distortion going on. So I think that what we're going to see is where people are thoughtless, have tended to dominate situations, Pluto in the 10th house, and use a lot of bluster, and also use a lot of techniques of obfuscation. So, for example, whoever it is, whether it's a big politician in whichever country, or it is a business person or a star in the media or a star in terms of acting and film, if there have been allegations about their behaviour, a lot of the way of dealing with it is to bluster about how they're being victimised, how this is what happens when your opponents are politically motivated, or there's some kind of sinister reason that some hidden powers are holding people to account because they've been more outspoken. I could list out the people, but I think you can work it out for yourself. So I feel that that energy is really going to come up to the boil over the next 2 weeks. So where anyone has used a dominating energy, a very masculine energy, in a negative way, I feel they're going to be held to account in the next 2 weeks like never before. And part of the reason is that nodal T-square with Pluto being activated by Mars, but in a way that suggests that trying to dominate the conversation or dominate the person who's raising the complaint, or to in some ways besmirch their personality or their integrity, it's going to backfire on these people in a big way. So this is a very interesting full moon. Of course, the moon's very much about how we're receptive, how we're emotional, our need for security. So it's very restless in the sign of Aries, and it amplifies our inner feelings, whereas the sun amplifies our outer activities. So it could be argued the moon can be subjective and the sun is wanting to be much more objective. But in a way, the moon in Aries, the sun in Libra, Mars in Libra as well, you can see this is quite a tender full moon. So I do feel that we're going to see a lot of this push and pull around the relationships that are in the public eye, but that can be played out in our own personal situations as well. So you may find yourself really finding your voice if someone hasn't been listening, whether it's about the washing up, if you're got kids at home that are not joining in and taking their share of the domestic load, or it is about some selfishness that's going on in a personal relationship, or some politics in a family tie, or at work, someone who's always expecting you to give maximum effort for minimum amount of acknowledgement, that's going to become an issue. So I feel that a lot of stuff's going to boil to the surface over the next couple of weeks. It can be exciting, can be revelatory, but I feel that people who've used bullying techniques, essentially, Mars square Pluto, to dominate others, they're going to be held to account in a way that they're not going to like. Now please stay with me as I go through each of the 12 zodiac signs, from Aries through to Pisces, to give you a flavour of what you can expect. So Aries, I feel that this event for you is particularly powerful because of two things. On one hand, you have Saturn in the 12th house, which is asking you to think very much about your past psychological investment. But on the other hand, you have the North Node in your sign, reinvigorating and pushing you to embrace what makes you unique and special. So over the next, it's around about a year and a quarter now, you have a fantastic opportunity through to the end of January 2025 to really get on the front foot. But you do need to integrate that energy coming from Saturn. So this crashes in to whatever's already going on for you and really demands your attention. Now, if you're an Aries person that uses your passion and your thrust in order to interact with people, make things happen, and very much are a negotiator, this can work really well for you. If you're someone who finds it difficult to find your voice, this is asking you to have the courage to rock the boat a little bit more. If you're someone who's quick to interact with people but perhaps tend to be a little bit defensive, just be conscious of the energy that Saturn is asking you to work with, because essentially it's asking you to bring into your consciousness parts of your nature that you may not be quite so aware of, or patterns, or perhaps if past things are really holding you in quite a grip, to come to terms with them so you can release them and really move into your future in a really powerful way. So for you, a really interesting full moon, but I certainly feel that when it comes to your relationship situation, if there is a tie that isn't quite working for you, this is going to be a seminal couple of weeks. Now Taurus, for you, the exciting news is that Mercury is just about to emerge from its shadow. That happens on the 30th. And that shadow began on the 4th of August. So in terms of your social situation, but also the more interactive and creative and demonstrative parts of your situation, things may have been a bit blocked or weighed down. And with Mercury in an opposition with Neptune, it's not absolutely nailed on that everything is quite as clear as you'd like. The thing is, with Uranus linking into Mercury, Uranus in your sign, that's giving you a chance to use that inventiveness to your absolute advantage. It's just that this full moon for you is in a deeply psychological location. If there is, particularly around your work, and a situation that is not really making you very happy, if you don't feel very appreciated, for example, or you feel there's a lot of office politics and that feeds into your soul somehow, I feel that this could be a push to try to change some elements of the physical structure of your everyday world. So that may mean going for another job where the vibe is better with colleagues, where you're going to feel more fulfilled in the way that you help people. But there may be some things that are going on that are slightly out of sight, so just be aware of that psychological domain. But I feel that Mars on the South Node can in some ways give you the motivation to make some changes, even if it could, through this change, bring up some vulnerability. So being open to something that's fresh and different, or adapting the way you're working at the present time, I think is really important over the next 2 weeks. Gemini, this is the full moon of popularity, and as we all know, we can't keep all of the people happy all of the time. And of course, Mercury, the planet of communication, has been trundling along in a really tricky part of your situation since the end of July, the 4th house. You may have found a lot of thoughts have been going around your mind. It's been more difficult to express yourself. You may have even just backed off a little bit in certain situations. And even though the Sun and Mars and Venus more recently have given you more thrust and desire to join in, I feel that your psychological antenna is really quite acute now. The great news is with Mercury coming out of shadow on the 30th, I thought greater clarity can come, but do be aware of the role of Neptune, which continues to provide the potential for confusion around your professional role, and Saturn there maybe a lot of a sense of heaviness and responsibilities just when you're needed to be more protective. But of course the Sun in your 5th house is very much about playfulness, and the Moon in the 11th house very much about the collective. But that playfulness needs to be you demonstrating what makes you affectionate and where you gain the most enjoyment. So I feel that the angle between Pluto and the nodal axis and Mars for you suggests if there is any politics or games being played or control, you know, the deep stuff that it does tend to be around quite a lot, where people may use leverage in order to have some kind of control over you. For example, if you've got a group of friends and there's a lot of backbiting going on, you may want to break free from them over the next couple of weeks. If there is a love relationship you're in, even a sexual attraction that runs hot and cold, it could run very hot over the next couple of weeks, but you need to be mindful of what you're getting from it at a more emotional level. The interesting thing about this full moon for your sign, Cancer, is that your feelings can feel very close to the surface, which may be something you don't actually entirely appreciate. The moon is very much about our need for security. You know this more than any sign because it's your governing planet. So something could be teased into the open that actually you could find is a little bit uncomfortable, but it may be linked to where you live or how you live there or who with, because the Sun and Mars are in your 4th house along with the South Node, very much about those areas. But the moon may provoke, because Aries is about action, some kind of shift or some extra impulse, but it may require some skillful interaction with others in order to get the best outcome, because Pluto in a square with Mars suggests if you do become frustrated and try to force the pace, it could actually be counterproductive. So if someone asks you some searching questions or tries to get some kind of understanding of your needs, even if for you that can feel very invasive, you're a very private sign very often, try to understand where they're coming from and don't see it as being an invasion, more as an opportunity for things to move. And with Venus still in a splendid link with Mars, there can be something that is going to evolve for you over this next couple of weeks, which brings something your way, some kind of tangible benefit. It could even be some fortune around some money linked to your home or your family. Someone's generosity or support could be really, really important to you. So Leo, for you, it's all about communication the next couple of weeks. You have the enchanting energies of Venus still in your sign, linking with the passionate vibe of Mars. What more could you want? Since the 12th of September, that's been a very evocative asset that you've been able to deploy. What's not to like? Well, it could be that some of the expression of your ideas, because of Mars's conjunction, pretty close conjunction to the South Node, some of your thinking, your belief systems may actually be quite ingrained in you from the past and may actually not be necessarily particularly appropriate for your future. So it could be a time when you may need to re-examine how you think, some of the ways of expression you have. And because Pluto's in the mix, someone somewhere could be critical or a little bit provocative or a bit pointed in letting you know that the way you think, your ideas or your personal expression may, as far as they're concerned, not actually be up to the standard they want, which of course could be quite grueling. Nothing worse than a Leo feeling that they're being corrected in some kind of way. So it is going to take some humility, this particular full moon. I don't necessarily think it's the best time to buy a new vehicle, if I'm honest, because maybe your subconscious can actually be much more active in terms of the choices you would make. And the main thing, I think, is to inform yourself. So gain as much information as you can around any subject that's important to you at the present time. And the more that you're open to learning and evolving, the more you're going to serve this full moon in a positive way. So Virgo, for you, it's very much about the money, or is it? Because the Sun, Mars and the South Node are all in house 2, your approach to everyday resources, but also your approach to your value, your self-worth. But having the feisty Mars applying to the position of the South Node, suggesting they're square to Pluto, if you feel that your creative talents are not receiving the recognition they deserve, whether it is in the practical amount of money you're earning, the appreciation that you get in terms of your worth, in terms of acknowledgement and encouragement, or is it more to do with just being in a role which actually is a little bit too samey, a bit too stuck? And because Aries is in your 8th house, this is about joint finances, your interactions with others, what you share, but also about your passion for where you can really feel connected. So I feel that Mars's interaction with this event, which is very strong, along with Pluto, just raises the stakes around worth, money, sex, intimacy, passion, self-expression and talent. And what you're wanting through the whole stream of it is to feel that you matter. You feel that you have some value. So Libra, this full moon is really interesting because there could be a juxtaposition to how everyone else is going to feel this event as far as you're concerned, because we're all collectively being asked to think about balancing our individual needs with how we relate. But for you, the encouragement that I've been giving you for some while is to focus more on defending your boundaries and really working on having the confidence to express your individuality. Now, this full moon could challenge that because someone could test you over the next couple of weeks and push back a little bit, just as you've been getting a bit firmer. So some politics are possible with someone close, and as has been the case for some time, maybe it is going to be someone that you have an emotional connection with, family member, a partner. But also it's important to stay open to how they feel, and the cardinality of your sign, particularly with having Mars on the South Node, could make you quite greedy, needy at this time to be in your own power. Don't lose those core qualities you've got to work with people and to find those points of interaction, those points of harmony. But it's certainly being very selective about who you're going to involve yourself with. So I would say continue to be feisty around the boundaries, but open to the people who really matter. Welcome, Scorpio. Wow, what a 2 weeks is in store for you. Your two rulers are in mortal combat, Mars and Pluto. Also, you have Mars, your traditional ruler, in your 12th house, which is a very tender location alongside the South Node. And whereas the position of the full moon itself in Aries, which, like your sign, governed by Mars, is very much more about practicalities. Pluto, your modern ruler, is very much about how you think, the passion with which you express your ideas. If you're someone who identifies with your belief systems a lot, this next couple of weeks could be a bit challenging, particularly with your interactions with colleagues or any situation where maybe you have to collaborate with people that may not necessarily be the people you would choose to be with. So that could be on a local community project, if you volunteer for something, if you have some kind of involvement in a social group. There can be some undercurrents, and those undercurrents can be quite tricky, and you may find that your emotions are pretty well up and down at the present time. And if someone does push a little bit too far, you could see you reach the ignition point much more quickly than would normally be the case. But if you can just tough this out and understand that maybe there are things that your deep nature is hanging on to in a deep-rooted way, which actually are poisoning you more than they're harming the other person that may have frustrated you. Now, I'm a very Scorpionic person. I have a lot of Scorpio. My ascendant starts late in Libra, overlays into Scorpio, but I have the Node and Jupiter and Neptune all in Scorpio in the first house. So a kind of Aries Scorpio hybrid, if you like. And it's very easy when we feel wronged to hang on to those things, but that really, I've learned, can have a very negative effect on our health and well-being. So if there is something that you can let go, release, I think it could be really cathartic for you, prepares you ready for the Scorpio new moon that's heading your way soon. So Sagittarius, you have a conflict potentially between what you want as an individual, the 5th house, very much about where we express ourselves, but it can be about joyfulness, but what the collective expects of you, or what your long-term hopes are, the 11th house. And if you feel that too much of your time is spent being connected to friends, people pleasing, in some kind of group situation, whether it's a sports team, whether it's some kind of social or some kind of group that's very much to do with a shared interest, and you feel that in some way your individual purpose is getting diluted, that's what you really need to be looking at over the next couple of weeks. And Pluto's basically saying to you, what's the worth of what you're doing at the present time, whether it's around your future plans or it is around your romantic situation, your friendships. What's the worth? That's the question Pluto is asking. So Capricorn, the next couple of weeks, really interesting, because you have the collective in the sign of Libra, which is really shining a light on the part of your nature, which is very aspirational, career-driven, ambitious, hard-working, tenacious, patient, applied. But what the moon's doing for you is reminding you that all those virtues are absolutely marvellous, but it's important always to remember how it feels. And also because Pluto is in that T-square with the nodal axis and Mars, if it doesn't feel right, you could find yourself being much more outspoken. And if you're someone who doesn't really like to rock the boat and likes to at least maintain the facade that everything is stable and steady, that could be a bit of a challenge. But there's the opportunity. You have Venus in the 8th house in a great link with Mars. Very, very good for business, I feel. Also Mercury linking brilliantly to Uranus. Stay open-minded. Mercury about to go emerge from its shadow tomorrow, the 30th. But there is, of course, that opposition between Mercury and Neptune, which can create some distortion, some draining energy where people may see things differently to you. Perhaps even in your immediate community, if there's gossip that does the rounds a lot, it could be really quite draining for you at the present time. So some kind of goal, hope, aspiration you've got, it needs to embrace how you feel, and it needs to feel right. So Aquarius, this particular full moon is very much about your expression of ideas, and because Libra is an air sign, you're an air sign, all good. Also the North Node being in the 3rd house of your solar chart, very redolent of the energies of Gemini, so quick, moving, lively, very nimble, able to pivot quickly, but also be very detached from emotion, and the moon is about emotion. So your words need to match your feelings over the next couple of weeks. And also because the position of the Sun and Mars and the South Node are very much about your higher values, maybe at times you could get caught up in being reactive to situations, expressing an opinion because you feel that maybe you should, but that could be the sediment that Pluto's been stirring up for a long time. So the more psychological side of your self-expression is very important over the next fortnight. So Pisces, for you, the position of the moon is in your 2nd house, how you feel about yourself, your self-worth, but also about everyday money. And also it's about your values. On the other side of the heavens, it could be that you're having to contend with someone else looking at things in quite a vastly different way. The 8th house is really hot energy, potentially very sexual. Is in a romantic relationship, is there a shared vision for your future, or do you have different values? Is that the clash point? That could reveal itself over the next couple of weeks, and with Neptune in your sign in a dreary, draining and distorting opposition with Mercury, it may feel that whatever responses you're getting, they're not very clear, not very compelling, and not necessarily very sincere. So what I feel the Aries full moon is saying to you is don't give up on those core values and your worth, but you have to interact with others at some level, and maybe really understanding whether you've got a longer term future with that business that you're involved with that business you're working in a partnership with, that romantic alliance. Is there really a long-term future? I think that's the question you should ask yourself when it comes down to the money and the shared values and how much passion there is between you. If you feel really lit up by an involvement, you will get through this full moon quite comfortably. If you don't, if you feel rather disorientated or rather disenchanted or disconnected, this is an important full moon to challenge those feelings. It's been a real pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much for joining me in my new abode, which is not quite set up as I would like yet, but I really have appreciated your company and wishing you all the best for the next 2 weeks through this Aries full moon.